I was in my workshop
Looking
sanding
back
a maple
now, I
board for a
realize the
porch
betrayal
swing
was
when the
inevitable.
phone buzzed
But
with
finding
Elena's
justice,
name. My
even after
girl.
all these
I wiped the
years.
dust, smiled, and answered.
Looking back
Laughter,
now, I
clinking
realize the
glasses.
betrayal was
Then a
inevitable.
man's voice I knew
But
too
finding
well.
justice,
Hey, Mr. Hart,
even after
funny
all
thing.
these years.
Derek's voice was butter on a hot
Looking
pan.
back now,
We
I realize the
already
betrayal
did
was
it.
inevitable.
Courthouse, real
But
intimate.
finding justice,
Just the good-looking
even after all
crowd.
these years.
Silence has a weight when it drops
Looking
from the
back
rafters
now, I realize
straight
the
onto your
betrayal was
chest.
inevitable.
I looked at the
But
board in my
finding
hands,
justice,
the grain
even
I'd
after all
measured
these
twice,
years.
the edge I'd trued by
Looking back
feel.
now, I
Already
realize the betrayal
married.
was inevitable.
It wasn't
But
a
finding
question.
justice,
Elena's
even after
voice
all
slid
these
in,
years.
small and breathy. Dad, it
Looking
was
back
last
now,
weekend.
I realize
We
the
wanted it
betrayal was
minimal,
inevitable.
clean, no
But
stress,
finding
no family,
justice,
I said.
even after
Derek
all these
chuckled.
years.
You know, aesthetic.
Looking back
Tight
now,
guest
I
list.
realize the
It's a
betrayal was
vibe.
inevitable.
I could hear my own
But
breathing
finding
in the
justice,
line.
even
62
after
years
all these
old.
years.
My hands have built decks,
Looking
framed
back
kitchens,
now, I realize
signed
the
closing
betrayal was
packets with
inevitable.
calloused fingers
But finding
that still
justice,
shake a little
even
when a
after
pen
all
is
these
cheap.
years.
I've paid for braces, bad
Looking back
tires, and
now,
one
I
foolish
realize
business
the
I never
betrayal was
mentioned.
inevitable.
I taught my
But
daughter that
finding
you don't
justice,
post
even
security.
after all these
You
years.
build it. Congratulations,
Looking
I
back
said.
now, I
Because the
realize
first
the betrayal
thing
was
pride
inevitable.
teaches a man
But
is
finding
where to put the
justice,
lid on the
even
pot.
after all these
Put
years.
Elena back on. Dad,
Looking
she
back
started.
now, I realize
Enjoy your
the
evening,
betrayal was
I said,
inevitable.
and hung up.
But
The
finding
dust
justice,
settled around
even
me,
after
slow
all
as
these
snow
years.
in yellow shoplight. There's a
Looking
younger
back now,
version
I
of me that
realize
might
the
have driven
betrayal
to
was
wherever
inevitable.
they were,
But finding
slammed a
justice,
door,
even
made a
after all
scene
these
for
years.
strangers with phones. I
Looking
thank
back
God that
now,
man
I
is gone.
realize the betrayal
These
was
days,
inevitable.
I don't swing
But
hammers
finding
when a
justice,
paperclip will do.
even after
Before
all
we
these
continue,
years.
please subscribe to the
Looking
channel
back now,
and tell
I
us where you're
realize the
listening
betrayal
from.
was inevitable.
I tell these
But
stories so
finding
men my
justice,
age don't have
even
to
after
learn the
all
hard
these
way.
years.
I cleaned the bench. I
Looking
wrote
back
a name
now,
on a
I
fresh
realize
manila
the
folder,
betrayal was
Oak and
inevitable.
Brick Holdings,
But finding
LLC.
justice,
If they
even
wanted
after all these
aesthetic,
years.
I'd give them structure. And if
Looking
Derek
back
thought
now, I
good looking
realize
was
the
a guest
betrayal was
policy,
inevitable.
we'd test
But
how
finding
pretty
justice,
cash flow looks
even after
when it
all these
stops.
years.
I didn't
Looking
raise my
back
voice.
now, I
I
realized
picked
the
up a
betrayal
pen
was inevitable.
and I made a
But
promise.
finding justice,
No shouting,
even
just
after all these
documents.
years.
I grew up in a house where
Looking
money
back
didn't
now, I
sleep in
realized the
banks.
betrayal
It
was
slept in
inevitable.
envelopes
But
tucked in a
finding
metal
justice,
box under my
even
father's
after
bed.
all these
He
years.
was a carpenter, same as his
Looking
father
back
before
now, I
him.
realized
No
the
credit
betrayal
cards,
was
no
inevitable.
loans, just
But
sweat and
finding
sawdust.
justice,
He used
even
to
after
say,
all these
"Son,
years.
own the ground under your feet,
Looking back
or someone
now, I
else will own
realized the
you."
betrayal was
By the
inevitable.
time I was
But
25,
finding
I had a
justice,
truck,
even
a
after
back
all
full of
these
pain,
years.
and one promise to myself.
Looking back now,
I'd never
I
let
realized
anyone
the
pull a
betrayal
roof
was
out from over
inevitable.
my head.
But finding
That's why I bought my
justice,
first
even
duplex,
after all these
even when
years.
people said I was crazy.
Looking
It
back
wasn't
now, I
much.
realized the
2
betrayal
cracked
was
driveways,
inevitable.
1
But
angry
finding
tenant, and a
justice,
basement that
even
smelled
after
like
all
wet
these
plaster.
years.
But it was mine.
Looking back
Every
now, I
nail,
realized the
every
betrayal
check,
was
every
inevitable.
code inspection, I
But
learned
finding
something.
justice,
I wasn't
even
rich,
after all these
but I was
years.
free. When Elena
Looking
was
back
little,
now, I
I'd
realized
take her
the
to
betrayal
job
was
sites.
inevitable.
She'd wear my
But
hard
finding
hat and ask,
justice,
"Why
even
do you
after
take
all these
pictures of
years.
everything, Dad?" I told her,
Looking back now,
because
I
proof
realized the betrayal
outlives
was inevitable.
excuses.
But
She
finding
laughed then,
justice,
but I
even
could see in
after
her
all
eyes
these
she didn't
years.
understand. She grew up
Looking
in a
back
different
now, I
world.
realized the
Wi-Fi,
betrayal was
filters,
inevitable.
soft
But
hands.
finding justice,
And that's fine.
even after all
That's
these
progress.
years.
But sometimes,
Looking
progress
back now,
makes
I
people
realized
forget the
the
ground
betrayal was
rules
inevitable.
that built the
But
progress in the
finding
first
justice,
place.
even
I'd
after
hoped
all
she'd
these
marry
years.
someone steady,
Looking
maybe a
back
teacher,
now, I
maybe a
realized the
man who could
betrayal
fix
was
his own
inevitable.
sink.
But
Instead,
finding
she brought home
justice,
Derek, a
even
walking
after all these
commercial.
years.
Perfect teeth, perfect shoes, and no
Looking back
calluses.
now, I
His
realized
business
the
wasn't
betrayal was
fitness.
inevitable.
It was the illusion of
finding
it.
justice,
Always selling,
even after
never
all
building.
these years.
Still, I tried. Took them out to
Looking back
dinner,
now,
paid the
I
bill,
realized the
listened to
betrayal
him
was
talk about
inevitable.
brand
But finding
engagement like it
justice,
was
even
concrete
after
and
all these
rebar.
years.
That
Looking
night,
back now,
I opened my
realized the
drawer and
betrayal
saw my
was
father's
inevitable.
old metal
But
box.
finding justice,
I'd replaced it with a
even after all
fireproof
these
safe
years.
years ago, but I kept the
Looking
box
back now,
to
I
remind
realized the
myself
betrayal
of
was
where it
inevitable.
started.
But
The old
finding
man used to
justice,
tap it
even
twice
after
before
all
bed
these
and
years.
say, "Discipline is how you
Looking
feed
back now, I
tomorrow."
realized
So
the
when
betrayal
Derek
was
mocked
inevitable.
old-fashioned
But
money thinking, I just smiled, because I knew the truth. In a world full of people chasing likes, I owned walls, doors, and deeds. And when someone humiliates a man like me in front of his own blood, he doesn't scream. He just dusts off the box, counts the cash, and starts planning ownership. Derek was one of those men who could make you feel outdated just by standing next to him. Always in gym-fitted shirts, designer sneakers, and that bright smile he probably practiced in front of a ring light. He talked fast, laughed louder, and every story started with, "So my followers said." When Elena brought him to my house the first time, he shook my hand with both of his. "Too tight, too long." "Sir," he said, "I love what you've done here." Kind of rustic, old school. Authentic vibes. That word, authentic, made my skin itch. Because when a man has to point out authenticity, he usually doesn't have any. Over dinner, he bragged about his company, Coal Fit Enterprises, and how he was about to sign a deal with a supplement brand. I asked him what he actually sold. He said lifestyle. I asked again, "What's the product?" He smiled like I'd missed the joke. Me. Elena laughed, but her eyes darted to me, waiting for approval. I gave her none. In the weeks after that dinner, I noticed small things. He'd joke about my dad shirts, comment that I should let the younger folks handle property apps. He called me old school as if it were an insult, not a badge. And when I offered to help them with a down payment for their apartment, he refused, then posted a video thanking independent hustlers who never take handouts. Funny thing, though, I noticed the lease on their new luxury loft was under someone else's management group. Not the building owner's name, not a big company either. Just a small LLC. I checked the county site one night out of curiosity. Turns out the same owner had filed 3 liens that year. Short on cash, vulnerable. That's when the seed planted itself. Quiet, small, dangerous. I started watching Derek's business, late-night searches, public filings, social media analytics. Turns out, Coal Fit Enterprises wasn't registered in North Carolina. His brand deal was an affiliate code anyone could sign up for. His studio space was month to month. Everything he had was paper thin, held together by hashtags. The man had built a castle out of pixels. I didn't say a word. I just started saving links, screenshots, contracts. I've learned over the years that you don't ruin a man by exposing his lies. You ruin him by letting his lies collapse on their own weight, one invoice at a time. And while he was busy curating angles and filters, I was curating proof. Because soon enough, that pretty hustle was going to need a landlord, and I already knew who he'd be answering to. You don't win wars by shouting across fences. You win them by owning the land under the fence. That was my father's lesson, and it was ringing loud in my head the week after Derek's little good-looking crowd wedding stunt. I started small. No confrontation, no angry calls, just research. I found the owner of their loft building, an older man named Franklin, who'd been trying to offload the property for months. 2 tenants had defaulted, and the mortgage company was breathing down his neck. I drove over one afternoon, clean shirt, clipboard in hand. I didn't show emotion. I showed numbers. Within 2 weeks, I'd formed a quiet LLC called Oak and Brick Holdings, opened a dedicated bank account, and wired a cashier's check for the building's outstanding note. The bank clerk asked, "You sure about this one, Mr. Hart?" "Buildings got high turnover," I smiled. "That's the point. Paper leaves a trail when you want it to." I made sure every step, every signature, every filing was stamped, dated, and stored. I didn't want revenge that lived on gossip. I wanted revenge that could stand up in court if needed. When the deed transfer finalized, I didn't tell a soul, not even my best friend Mark, who'd helped me close deals for years. All I did was lock the documents in my safe labeled future renovations. Meanwhile, Elena and Derek posted photos of their new creative loft. String lights, fake plants, smiling selfies. "Building dreams together," one caption read. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. I started collecting data quietly. Their lease terms, renewal dates, payment history. Turns out Derek was already behind 1 month, too busy buying lighting rigs for his videos. That's when I made my first move. I called the property manager, who now worked for me without even knowing it, and had him update all leases under the new ownership. Nothing suspicious, just standard paperwork. Then I added one new clause: all lease renewals subject to market adjustment and management approval. Translation: I could double their rent or not renew it at all. 2 weeks later, Derek texted Elena a photo of the notice taped to their door. Rent increase, 40%? This is insane. She called me crying. "Dad, they're raising our rent out of nowhere." We can't afford this. I let a pause hang long enough to taste it. That's what happens when you rent from strangers, sweetheart. You never know who owns the walls. There was a silence, then a quiet, yeah, I guess. I hung up and opened my safe. For the first time since the wedding call, I smiled. Because this wasn't anger anymore, it was architecture. Every column, every beam of what I was building would lead them right back to the truth. Revenge, after all, is just construction with better planning. 2 weeks after the rent notice went out, my phone lit up again. It was late evening, and I was in the den balancing my books when Elena's name appeared. I let it ring twice before answering. "Dad," she said, voice tight, "we got a notice from management. They're increasing our rent by 40%. And they even do that?" I paused, pretending to check the line. 40? That's steep? Did you read the lease? She hesitated. Derek handled all that. Of course he did. The man who bragged about being financially savvy hadn't even read the fine print. "I think," I said slowly, "you should look at the clause about market adjustment. It's legal. Just business." "Business," she repeated, her voice trembling. "Dad, we just got married. We can't afford to move right now." I softened my tone. "Sometimes that's how life teaches you to read what you sign." In the background, I heard Derek's voice, sharp and arrogant. "Tell him this is discrimination." "They can't do that," I almost laughed. "Discrimination against what? Bad math?" Elena sighed, caught between us. "Please, Dad, I don't know what to do." "You come home," I said quietly. "There's space here till you figure things out." A week later, I heard the sound of suitcases at my door. Derek didn't make eye contact. He was carrying boxes labeled studio gear and brand props. Elena followed, pale and embarrassed. I didn't make a speech. I just moved my things from the guest room and handed her the spare key. "You'll stay here for a while," I said. "House rules still apply." That first dinner was quiet. I made roast chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy. Derek picked at his plate and muttered, "Carbs aren't really part of my regimen." "Good thing this isn't your gym," I said. He smirked, then excused himself early. Elena stayed behind, helping me wash dishes. "He's under a lot of stress," she whispered. "So am I said. "Difference is, I don't film mine for followers." After they went to bed, I checked my email. The property manager had confirmed that the other tenants were adjusting fine to the new rates. The building was still profitable. My investment was solid. But this wasn't just about profit anymore. It was about balance. For years, I'd built foundations for strangers. Now I was rebuilding one at home, brick by brick. The next morning, Derek left early, claiming he had a client shoot. I watched him from the porch as he got into a leased car, one I now knew he could barely afford. I sipped my coffee and smiled. Let him keep posing. Let him think he's in control. Because every mirror he stood in front of was about to show him what real accountability looks like. Revenge wasn't loud anymore. It was domestic, quiet, served fresh at breakfast. The house had rules, always did. You cook what you eat, you clean what you use, and you speak with respect. It wasn't a hotel, it was a home. I reminded them both on their first full morning back. Derek smiled, that salesman's smile of his. "Of course, Mr. Hart. Totally appreciate your hospitality. We'll be out of your hair in no time." "Good," I said, sipping my coffee. "Make sure it's your own hair next time. My clippers aren't communal." He didn't laugh. Over the next few weeks, I watched the little frictions grow like cracks in drywall. Elena tried to help around the house, cooking dinner, folding laundry, watering the garden. Derek, on the other hand, spent his mornings in front of the mirror, rehearsing motivational quotes for his online sessions. He'd film in my living room, moving my furniture for better lighting, then forget to put it back. I didn't say much. I just started charging studio use in the form of house chores, trash duty, lawn trimming, and weekend grocery runs. I called it rent in kind. Elena understood. Derek didn't. One night I invited a few old friends from my construction days for dinner. Rough hands, quiet men, the kind who say little but mean every word. Derek came down in a fitted blazer and introduced himself like a politician. I'm Derek
finding
Cole,
justice,
he said proudly.
even after all these
Entrepreneur,
years.
fitness coach,
Looking back now,
lifestyle
I realized
consultant.
the betrayal
One of
was
my
inevitable.
buddies, Hank, nodded
But
and said,
finding
"You
justice,
lift anything
even
heavier
after
than
all
that
these
fork,
years.
son?" The room went silent.
Looking back now,
Derek
I
laughed
realized the
nervously and
betrayal was
excused
inevitable.
himself to take a business
finding
call.
justice,
That was lesson
even after
one.
all these
Real
years.
work doesn't need an audience.
Looking back now,
Later,
I realized the
I saw
betrayal
him
was
trying to
inevitable.
pitch online
But
coaching
finding justice,
to one of my friend's
even after all
wives,
these years.
telling her he could transform
Looking back
her
now,
brand.
I realized the
I cut that
betrayal
off
was
quick.
inevitable.
"Derek,"
But
I said,
finding justice,
"around here we
even
don't
after
sell
all
what we
these
can't
years.
deliver." He didn't get it
Looking
then,
back now,
but I knew he
realized the
would
betrayal
soon.
was inevitable.
As weeks passed,
But
I
finding
noticed their
justice,
online
even
presence
after all
changing.
these years.
The smiles looked strained, captions
back
turned
now, I
defensive.
realized the
Real
betrayal was
love is
inevitable.
tested.
But finding
Haters don't get
justice,
happy
even
couples.
after all these
Followers
years.
started dropping. A brand
Looking back
sponsor
now, I
pulled out,
realized the betrayal
citing
was
reputation
inevitable.
concerns.
But finding
At
justice,
dinner one night,
even after
Elena
all
looked
these
worn
years.
out. "Dad, everything's
Looking
falling
back
apart.
now, I realized
Derek's
the
losing
betrayal was
clients and we
inevitable.
can't pay his credit
But finding
cards."
justice,
I nodded
even
slowly.
after all these
"That's what
years.
happens when you chase image instead of
Looking
income."
back now, I
Derek
realized
muttered
the
something
betrayal
under
was
his breath,
inevitable.
something
But
about
finding
boomer
justice,
jealousy.
even after all these years.
I pretended not to hear it.
Looking back now,
Because
I
every
realized the
story
betrayal was
needs the
inevitable.
villain to believe he's
But
winning
finding justice,
right before the
even
fall.
after all
I
these
stood up,
years.
cleared my plate and said,
Looking back
"Tomorrow
now, I
night,
realized
we'll
the
have
betrayal
guests
was
again.
inevitable.
Investors
But
this
finding
time,
justice,
you might want to
even
sit
after all
in.
these
It'll be
years.
educational." He didn't
Looking
realize
back
it yet,
now,
but
I
the next
realized the
dinner
betrayal
wouldn't be
was
about
inevitable.
food.
But
It'd be
finding
about
justice,
exposure
even after
and
all
how
these
quickly
years.
fake muscles collapse under real
Looking
pressure.
back now,
That
I
investor
realized the
dinner
betrayal
was
was
when the
inevitable.
walls finally
But
began to
finding
talk.
justice,
I'd
even
invited
after
a few
all
folks
these
from my
years.
network, contractors,
Looking back
a
now,
property
I realized
broker,
the
one
betrayal was
accountant,
inevitable.
and a pastor's
finding
wife
justice,
who ran the
even
church
after all these
outreach
years.
committee. The kind of people who know
Looking back
everyone
now, I
and
realized
forget
the betrayal
nothing.
was
I set the
inevitable.
table myself.
But finding justice,
Slow roast
even
beef,
after all
cornbread,
these years.
collards, and a bottle of wine older
Looking
than
back
Derek's
now, I
career.
realized the betrayal was
Elena
inevitable.
looked
But
anxious.
finding
Derek
justice,
looked confident.
even after
Too
all these
confident.
years.
He saw an audience.
Looking
The
back
moment
now,
everyone
I
sat
realized
down,
the
he
betrayal
switched
was
on his
inevitable.
charm.
But
"I'm
finding
actually in
justice,
talks with a couple of
even after
investors
all these
myself,"
years.
he said, flashing that
Looking back
Instagram
now, I
grin.
realized the
Expanding
betrayal was
cold fit
inevitable.
into brand
But finding
partnerships,
justice,
retreats,
even after
influencer
all these
crossovers.
years.
Big potential.
Looking
The
back
accountant,
now,
a
I
quiet man
realized the
named
betrayal
Terry,
was
nodded
inevitable.
politely.
But
"You must
finding
have a
justice,
solid business
even
credit
after
score
all
then,"
these years.
Derek blinked. "Oh,
Looking
yeah,
back now,
definitely,"
I realized
Terry
the
smiled.
betrayal was
"I can
inevitable.
check right now if you
But
like."
finding justice,
"Always good to
even
exchange
after all
contacts."
these
The
years.
air tightened. Derek laughed
Looking back
nervously.
now, I
"Not
realized the
necessary,
betrayal was
man.
inevitable.
It's more of a
But
personal
finding
brand
justice,
thing,
even
less
after all
paperwork,
these
more
years.
momentum." Hank chuckled
Looking
from the
back
other end
now,
of the
I
table.
realized the betrayal was
"Momentum
inevitable.
doesn't pay rent,
But
son."
finding justice,
Even Eleanor
even
gave a
after all
faint,
these
helpless
years.
smile. That night, after
Looking
the
back
guests
now, I
left,
realized
she
the
sat
betrayal was
quietly at the
inevitable.
kitchen counter.
But finding justice,
"Dad, they knew,
even
didn't
after
they?"
all these years.
"They knew enough," I said. "In this
Looking
town,
back now,
reputation
I
is your
realized the
credit."
betrayal
And
was
Derek
inevitable.
just bounced his.
But finding
The fallout
justice,
began
even
fast.
after all
The
these
church
years.
committee withdrew their collaboration
Looking back
invite.
now, I realized the
Apparently,
betrayal
Derek
was
had pitched a
inevitable.
wellness
But finding
fundraiser
justice,
where most of the
even
ticket
after
money
all
would have
these
gone to
years.
his brand exposure.
Looking back now,
The
I
story
realized the
spread
betrayal
like
was
wet
inevitable.
paint.
But
His
finding
sponsors started
justice,
ghosting
even
him
after
one by
all these
one.
years.
He tried to pivot. "Maybe
Looking
I'll
back
start
now,
a
I
podcast."
realized the
"People
betrayal
love
was
raw
inevitable.
honesty." I raised
But
an
finding
eyebrow.
justice,
"Try raw
even after
receipts
all these
first."
years.
For a brief moment, I saw his
Looking
mask
back
crack.
now, I
He
realized
wasn't
the
angry,
betrayal
he
was
was
inevitable.
scared. But
But
fear
finding
can't grow
justice,
roots in a
even
man
after
who
all
only knows
these years.
shortcuts. The next morning,
Looking
he
back
left
now,
early,
I realized
claiming
the
to
betrayal
meet
was
potential
inevitable.
backers.
But finding
That evening,
justice,
I found
even
an
after all
envelope on
these
the kitchen
years.
table addressed to Elena.
Looking back
Inside,
now, I realized
an
the
unpaid
betrayal
credit
was
card
inevitable.
bill and a
But
note that
finding
read,
justice,
"Can you
even
talk
after
to your
all
dad
these
about
years.
this? Temporary loan."
Looking back
Elena
now,
was
I
crying when I
realized the
walked
betrayal
in.
was inevitable.
"He's not who I thought he
But
was."
finding justice,
"No," I said
even
gently,
after all
"but
these
now you're
years.
seeing who you are. You're
Looking
stronger
back
than
now,
you
I
think."
realized the betrayal was inevitable.
Later that
But
night, I
finding
sat at my
justice,
desk,
even after all
opened my
these
file
years.
labeled Oak and Brick
Looking back
Holdings,
now, I
and added
realized
one
the
more
betrayal was
document,
inevitable.
a letter of
But finding
non-renewal for
justice,
Derek's Derek studio lease, the same building he used for his fitness content. I sealed it in an envelope, stamped it and whispered, "Lesson 3, Derek, never disrespect a man who owns your backdrop, because by the end of the week, those ring lights of his would be shining on an empty room." The envelope was delivered on a Monday morning, a thick, beige packet, stamped with the Oaken Brick Holdings logo. The company name Derek had mocked weeks earlier when he found my architectural blueprints on the dining table and called them boomer hobbies. Now, that same logo carried his eviction notice. Elena came running into my office, eyes wide and hands shaking. Dad, this says Oaken Brick owns Derek's studio. That can't be right. I set down my coffee mug and turned my laptop toward her. It's right. On the screen were the county deed records highlighted in yellow. Assignment of rents and lease agreements, transfer of note, and LLC articles of incorporation. Every page dated, notarized, and filed months before they ever moved in. Wait, she whispered. You bought the building. I didn't buy it, I said. I rescued it. You were about to sign a 5-year lease with a landlord about to go bankrupt. You'd have been homeless in 6 months anyway. She sank into the chair, staring at the documents. Why didn't you tell me? Because sometimes, Elena, the only way to teach an adult child is to let them walk into the storm with an umbrella they ignored. Then Derek walked in, face pale, voice brittle. You did this, he hissed. You set us up. I leaned back. No, Derek, I set up a safety net. You just mistook it for a spotlight. He slammed the papers on my desk. You think this makes you better than me? Controlling everyone like some puppet master? I met his glare. No, I think it makes me prepared. The world doesn't hand out apologies. It hands out invoices. He looked at Elena for backup, but she stayed silent. Her eyes had the look of someone finally seeing daylight after years of filtered brightness. I opened one last folder. Bank transfer receipts, escrow confirmations, and the LLC's tax filings. I slid them across the desk. Everything's legal, every cent documented. You wanted to build a brand? This is how men build legacies. He didn't say another word, just stood there breathing hard, his jaw tight. Then he left. Elena sat for a while longer, tears silently rolling. Dad, she said softly, I was blind, wasn't I? I nodded. No one learns to see with their eyes closed, sweetheart. That night, I locked the files back into the safe. Justice wasn't loud. It didn't need applause or vengeance. It just needed proof, and now the proof was airtight. The next morning, I found Derek's car gone, and his things neatly stacked in the foyer. Tripods, branded shirts, and a half-empty jar of protein powder. No note, just absence. Elena sat at the kitchen table, eyes red but steady. He left last night, she said quietly. Took the rest of his stuff before sunrise. I poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from her. Sometimes people run when they finally see themselves clearly. She nodded, clutching the mug like it was the only warm thing left. I feel stupid, Dad, embarrassed. Everyone warned me. You warned me. I reached across the table, resting my hand on hers. You're not stupid. You're human. You believed in someone who didn't earn it. But that's how you learn who deserves your loyalty. She looked up, eyes glistening. What happens now? Now, I said, you rebuild on your own terms. You'll pay rent here for a few months. Nothing crazy, but something real. You'll handle your finances, get your own credit back on track. No handouts, just structure, she smiled faintly. Like Oaken Brick? Exactly, I said. Strong foundation, solid beams, and no influences allowed. We both laughed for the first time in weeks. Later that day, I drove to the studio one last time. The locks had already been changed, the lights dimmed. I stood there for a moment, looking around the empty space that had once been filled with his empty words. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even proud. I was done. As I walked back to my truck, I thought of my father's old saying, revenge isn't yelling, it's the sound of balance returning. And as I turned the key in the ignition, I realized balance had finally come home.